the consciousness and the cosmos, a path to one's own inner cosmos, in assistance of a more profound understanding of the current planetary transition. A stimuli that accompanies the pilgrim in his return to his cosmic home. The Consciousness and the Cosmos. Podcast Boxim Planetary Service Center. Welcome back to the last fourth part of the most recent interview with Daniel Gagliardo alongside Denise. Denise is asking whether what occurs on the micro level within ourselves will also happen on the macro level. Are they essentially the same?
A ver, en el planeta hay aspectos de armonía, de equilibrio y de caos que cohabitan. Porque hay un aspecto de la armonía y el equilibrio del planeta que no se perdió. No somos nosotros, con nuestra incapacidad y nuestras limitaciones evolutivas.
Daniel Gagliardo answers, exactly. Let's see. On the planet, there are aspects of harmony, equilibrium, and chaos that coexist. Because there is an aspect of harmony and equilibrium on the planet that has not been lost. It is not us, with our incapacity and our evolutionary limitations, who can take away from the planet all of its active principles in terms of harmony and equilibrium. There is a planetary aspect that is chaotic, but there is a deep and hidden foundation of cosmic equilibrium and harmony that we cannot take away. Similarly, microcosmically, we may be experiencing aspects of reality in chaotic, unbalanced way, but we cannot nullify or eclipse the harmony and equilibrium present within us. So, what can we do in this transition?
Trascender la identificación con el caos material, dejar de confirmar la materia como única verdad y la verdad como material, y aprender a sintonizar la vida interna y reflejarla a través de nuestros patrones de vida y de conducta.
Transcend identification with material chaos. Stop confirming matter as the only truth and truth as material. And learn to synchronize and be in attunement with our inner life and reflect it through our patterns of life and behavior. Those who can reflect their inner life in their patterns of life and behavior will be making the necessary contribution that the planetary consciousness requires in order to close this transition in the highest possible way. The majority will continue to confirm the chaotic course that we have set as a human collective, but there is a minority of pioneers who have the task of putting in place what the majority does not. Denise is continuing with her following question. I would like to ask you, Daniel, one more question, if you don't mind. When we talk about brothers, other civilizations, intraterrestrial cities, extraterrestrials, and beings of light, I refer to these entities as brothers because I'm not sure what else to call them. They're beings living in cities known as intraterrestrial. We could discuss Erks, which is the one we are most familiar with.
Mirá, primero no existen civilizaciones internas, intraterrenas, que vivan en ciudades, porque el término ciudad obedece a la concepción urbana que nosotros tenemos.
First of all, they are not internal, subterranean civilizations living in cities, because the term city refers to the urban concept that we have. So, are there subterranean, interoceanic, interigneous, and interaerial civilizations? Yes, they exist, but they do not live in cities, because they do not require that type of structure, as their state of consciousness make it absolutely incompatible. A city, with everything that a city entails, is related to our conception of life, our way of living. The beings do not have a physical body. They do not have an emotional body. They do not have a mental body. So what would be the point of them building cities if their relationship with the laws and with energy is not the same as ours? We need cities, and we need everything that makes up life on a concrete level in terms of what constitutes us. These beings are divine consciousness, monadic consciousness, which means that they constitute in their current constitution as nuclei of energy that are alien to material patterns. Nothing that makes up their consciousness and their civilization is based on the presence of concrete material patterns, which means they are living in dimensional fields of such a subtle order that all energies, all structures are energies and vibrational magnetic patterns. Imagine, why would a civilization or consciousness that no longer needs material life want a city?
Son conjuntos de conciencias muy amplios, muy elevados, muy heterogéneos, porque no están constituidos por un patrón genético, sino por una multiplicidad de estados vibratorios.
So what are these civilizations? They are very broad, very elevated, very heterogeneous sets of consciousness, because they are not constituted by a genetic pattern, but by a multiplicity of vibratory states that are contained in the energy bases of planetary centers, which are large vortexes of energy that provide the foundations for these great civilizations to settle. Erks is a great entity that is settled on a great vortex of energy of this region of the planet, which is called the Erks Valley. So, civilizations, all advanced civilizations, do not have cities. Yes, they exist within a conglomerate characterized by complementary and cohesion within a large energy field. They focus their activities on a variety of evolutionary aspects that surpass our understanding. Civilizations like Erks operate on multiple levels: planetary, systemic, intersystemic, galactic, and even intergalactic. This means that their activity is much more than planetary. While we refer to and are reduced to activity on the surface of the planet, these beings simultaneously, through a principle of omnipresence that they have already attained, can work in a different dimensional range, attending to needs simultaneously. Denise continues. Those who claim to have seen such beings often describe them in various ways: tall, with curls and blonde hair, for example. However, are these descriptions false?
No es mentira estrictamente, aunque pudiera serlo. A ver, cualquier declaración que provenga de un ser humano puede ser verdad, puede ser mentira, o puede ser un aspecto de la verdad, ¿sí?, que necesariamente para poder sintonizarlo se tuvo que revestir de algo en particular. Entonces,
Daniel Gagliardo answers, no, it is not strictly a lie, although it could be. Any statement that comes from a human being can be true, it can be a lie, or it can be an aspect of the truth that, in order to be in attunement with, had to be clothed with something particular. So sometimes, in order to approach an aspect of reality, human consciousness has to see it covered up or has to perceive it in a particular symbolic way. Often, when these energies try to stimulate human consciousness, they take on format so that human consciousness can have a reference point, can identify them. From there, successive stimulations will not necessarily be repeated in the same way. So, there are people who say they have permanent contact. Let's see one example. There are people who have told me, every Friday night I go out onto the terrace and a spaceship comes to visit me. This is relative because the energy, the higher laws, don't try to get you used to something, like a dog that knows that when you go out at a certain time, you're going to give it a biscuit. So most of those statements are kind of illusion or spiritual ambition or philosophical ambition, and they tend to be a little distorted in relation to the truth. Now, more than once throughout human history, highly evolved consciousness have taken shape, and they have manifested themselves and will continue to manifest themselves to those who need them in order to provide them with stimuli that may be needed and only accepted in that format. So, energy in its intelligence can present itself in a particular way. Now, when all of that becomes a repetitive succession of issues, then there are material forces at work, and we cannot genuinely consider it a reference point of a higher cosmic order. Venus continues. It becomes a business, you see. Daniel answers, yes, there is a big business behind all this. As with everything, humanity makes a business out of everything. Denise continues, Daniel, what message would you like you to leave us with? Something you feel compelled to share with us.
Nosotros sugerimos a las personas que avancen en la autoobservación y el autoconocimiento, que aprendan a simplificar humildemente sus vidas, que aprendan a reconocer la frivolidad presente en ellas, que rompan la barrera de guardar teoría y creer que por tener teoría ya son prácticos.
Daniel Gagliardo answers, we suggest that people advance in self-observation and self-knowledge, that they learn to humbly simplify their lives, that they learn to recognize the frivolity present in them, that they break down the barrier of keeping theory and believing, that by having theory, they are already practical. The being has to live the synthesis of practical spirituality. Today, it's not enough to be a spiritual being by reading spiritual or philosophical books. Those who cannot trace the line of practical spirituality will remain in theory and miss the boat. Simplify life, learn to recognize who we are, transform ourselves, be consistent. Most people who talk about spirituality still eat corpse, consume animal products, and dress in leather. This means that if we are not capable of maintaining and safeguarding minimal ethics with animals, with plants, with minerals, if we cannot do that, what kind of transformation we are talking about? This is very important, learning to observe ourselves humbly and realize that what in the past seemed sufficient to advance spiritual knowledge and practice is now deficient. Those who cannot express true ethics and spiritual and philosophical consistency through thoughts, feelings, and actions, then, without knowing it, or in a state of semi-consciousness, are only putting on a show, and this is not the time for theater.